Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
Glenn.
What's happening, man? How you doing?
Good morning. You know what? I'm doing great. Coffee shop's a safe place to be. You know, they don't serve alcohol here, so I'm pretty safe.
They serve a lot of coffee, though, don't they?
They do indeed. I got the tall with extra cream, extra sugar. Ooh, hello. How you doing?
Good, man. We're prepping for our little session here.
Yeah. So
I love jumping in the coffee shop.
I know. It's good stuff. We've had some great episodes and reminders that, we've got a resource room. So, things that you hear here or things that you missed, we've got a great resource room. So it's at www.sober.coffee. And then just click on the resource room. We also have writings so what happens is we'll listen to an episode or do an episode, and there's something usually that's said that could be expounded on, or just a thought that we have post-show. And sometimes it's tightly related to the topic. Sometimes it's just one little thing that was said that we kind of expound on. Yeah, a little nugget, and we kind of unpack it. But for those that like to read, it's a good resource. So welcome to them.
Good stuff.
They're free.
Stuff.
They're free all day long. What are we talking about today, my friend?
Good stuff, man. So, there's these things called the 12 steps, right?
Right.
Have you heard of them?
Yes.
Yes. 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And man, I'll tell you what, just super, super impactful in both our lives. And, hey, there's a lot of other ways to get sober. We're pro-sobriety. We don't really care. But we know for us, AA works for us.
Can I mention that the 12 steps are now wider range, and other addictive behaviors adopt the 12 steps.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a great way to change the way you live.
That's right. So 12
in fact,
steps right.
It's funny, the other programs that don't like AA, it's funny how many of those have 12 steps. And it's funny how some of those other programs, and I probably come across like I'm mocking, but they're create your own way.
Right.
Create your own path. Well, I did that for 50 years. And
yeah, right.
It got me in the rooms.
It
got me in the rooms of AA.
Yeah, right. There you go. All right, so it's 12 steps.
Yeah, so it's 12 steps. So there's two steps that I think are really powerful for me, and that's steps 8 and 9. Just want to chat about them here a little bit with some real life, and I think some listeners, right? Some people have done the steps, some are curious and are just chomping in, some like different perspectives on things. So what I thought we'd do is just spend some time with steps 8 and 9 and just kind of share real life with some of our current real life, up to the minute, real time experience. Right. With steps 8 and 9. So one of the things that we like to point out is the steps are in order for a reason, right? And in early sobriety, everybody's gung-ho. They got the pink cloud. They just want to solve all their problems. They created so much. The hurricane's over. Let's just rebuild and move on. And that's not how it works, right? These things, sobriety takes time. Working the steps takes time. And for a couple reasons. I've seen specific examples, right? So let's just talk about step 8 and 9, and then we'll tear it apart. So step 8 is make a list of all people we have harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Right?
So make a list and be willing.
Right. And then step 9 is made direct amends wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Right?
So make action. Make amends.
Right. So what I will tell you is in those little words, there is a lot of wisdom that is imparted in those two steps. And what I will almost guarantee you is if you go embark on the steps 8 and 9 by yourself, you will mess up. Because it's hard to fix a problem with the same brain that created it. It's hard to make amends it's hard for me to figure out how to make amends to you when I was the one that screwed up to begin with, right? So it's hard for me. So it's good to have the outside influence of a sponsor. It's good to work the 12 steps with a sponsor, right? If you don't, then you're just going to get the same crap remunerating and just spinning around your own brain, right? So A, don't do it alone, and B, don't jump into, hey, I quit drinking. Boy, 2 weeks from now, I'm going to start making my step 8 and 9 amends because I heard about it in a meeting. Right? When you haven't done the rest. And here's 2 reasons for that. My reasons, not the big book reasons, but my reasons from my direct experience and working with you and working with others. Number 1 is when you make amends to somebody, it really helps that they've seen a period of time where you haven't drank and
done the same behavior.
And they've seen you do the work. They see you're committed to living a new way of life. If you don't let that time go by, most alcoholics that I've seen and worked with, and myself, we've apologized to people 4,000 times. Our words mean nothing to those special people. Right? They've heard it. And it's, Glenn's on his pink cloud again. Glenn's saying he's sorry again. Glenn's, it's a bunch of bullshit again.
Right.
And that's how people look at it.
Sure.
Because that's how people
Rightfully
told me
so.
they looked at it. Right. So what really mattered in my step 8 and 9 is that there was a period of time, 3 years where people saw me, A, not drink, B, the hurricane stopped. There's no more calls. Glenn's going to another rehab. Glenn's going to another detox, right? No more of those calls for 3 years. And they saw I was committed to living a new way of life. And I started behaving differently. That was the soil. That was the fertilizer where I could start to do steps 8 and 9.
I love it.
And then secondly is, a danger zone is, people just aren't going to blow you off. And then the second part of that is, over a period of time, I call it sober maturity, right? Because the whole thing's about steps 8 and 9 is, step 9, making amends, is I can only control what I deliver to you. I can't control your reaction to me.
Right.
And when I call it sober maturity, there are people who they can't handle. They have their expectation of everything going nirvana and, we're going to hug, and the
rejection.
They can't handle the
crush
rejection where somebody says F you and throws a drink in your face.
Right.
I'm never talking to you again.
Right.
They can't handle that. And then guess what?
They drink.
And I've seen it. So work the steps in order, work it with a sponsor, because a sponsor can provide direction. So when I did step 8, I had a list. Let's say there's 12 people on my list. Over time, and I usually don't talk about my length of sobriety, but I just want to put this in perspective. I got roughly 9 years, right? So over time, I've added more people to my list.
Right, yeah.
Because
likewise.
you know what? I've changed how I live. I've changed how I look at things.
You changed how you looked at things.
Yeah,
in the past
I
and
hold
present.
myself
Right.
a little tighter, more accountable.
Right.
So I've added some people,
Yes.
and then there's 2 on my list working with my sponsor. He's like, you're not going to do those.
Right.
We're going to find a different way to do those.
Right.
Because the second
Again,
part
not
is
doing
when
it
it hurts them or others.
That's right.
Now,
Right.
in my mind, right, I would have jumped in and done them.
Right.
But his wisdom and his ability to look at the situation objectively, provided me that insight. So, hey, I've had some winnings, right? I've had my ex-wife, God love her, man. She directly says, she goes, Glenn, I understand step 9. She goes, we don't even really need to sit down. She goes, it is so obvious you have changed the way you live. It is so obvious the way you have relationships with your daughters. She said, I just love that. She goes, there's no need to sit down. You have made your amends with me. And I would call that living amends. Right? So I have lived a new way. I didn't have to call her and say, hey, I'm going to detox again. Can you tell the girls I'm not going to be there?
Right.
I didn't have to do that. Right? So I've changed. So very gracious with my daughters, Very gracious. Story of redemption, story of earning my way back, and story of, right, great. The IRS, I've told that story. That was a miracle, you know. I mean, I just have some amazing stories. But I want to share one, well, a couple things. Number one, Blue October, right? Blue October, love them, they're a band. Sobriety, he's got 11 years of sobriety. During COVID, you know, he would get on every Tuesday night and talk about a step, and he would do covers. And I mean, he just loves sobriety, and he loves AA and loves the 12 steps. And so we did an episode recently on A Night with Blue October. Well, I recently went back with him to another concert, another Night with Blue October, number 2. And we had a question and answer, and so I asked him, I'm like, hey, I know you love the 12 steps. Tell me your best 9th step story. And he paused. He goes, man, that's a good question. He goes, without a doubt, he goes, it was with my brother. He said, I was going through, and you know, it had been a period of time, and right, and he said, I went to lunch with my brother, and I had a notebook full of all the stuff, right? And I'm going to get emotional because it's really cool. He said, I had in my mind what I was going to spew out and kind of unload that I was sorry for, and how can I make this right? And he said, I had all laid out with this notebook full of notes. And he said, we sat there for several hours, and he said, he shared the impact that my behavior had on him. And he said, it blew me away. It just blew me away. He said, I came out of that lunch, he said, for the first time in my life, I think I had a snippet of being a good big brother for him.
Wow.
And it's just, this 8th and 9th step, just super powerful. When you talk about a miracle in the room, I get chills. When you talk about the miracle of shit happening, right? So I framed that, and I recently did a 9th step that I just want to, I don't think I've shared this with you, and I just want to put it out there. And again, warning signs, warning signals, right? You gotta do it with somebody, and you gotta do it over a period of time. So, probably, I'm on LinkedIn, right? Probably the last 4 years. An old relationship of mine reaches out every birthday and says, happy birthday.
Romantic relationship.
Romantic relationship, right? We dated 3 years.
Okay, there you go.
And we were great friends, romantic relationship. We weren't really going anywhere. She didn't really want to get married. I just got out of a marriage. And
drinking buddy?
No.
Okay.
No, I was trying to be sober. I was, trying a little AA. I had already been through one rehab, and so I told her I didn't drink, and but I was struggling, right? Mm-hmm. And so this past birthday, she reaches out again. I've never responded.
And I'm sorry, Glenn, just for context, how many years ago was this that you had?
2003.
Okay, gotcha. So 20 years.
Yeah, exactly 20 years ago, right?
Right.
So I'm like, you know what? She should be on my amends list.
What'd your sponsor say?
Well, so that's the process, right?
Okay.
So do I make my own decision, or do I talk to my sponsor? I talk to my sponsor. So I'm at the dinner with my sponsor. I got 2 situations that have come up that are 2 situations I want to add. One's a financial situation, and one is this relationship. And I'm like, as I think about this relationship, because now I feel I'm in a healthy space, right? 4 years ago when she first reached out, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, I just didn't even respond, right? Mm-hmm. I'm like, and I'm very cautious. I'm very cautious. I don't have a lot of women's phone numbers. I'm just very,
right.
I'm very aware, very cautious.
You have very
right?
tight guardrails when it comes to
very
that.
tight guardrails. So I talked to my sponsor, and he goes, okay, it sounds reasonable. We were out at dinner, and we talked about the 2 that are still on the sidelines, always going to be on the sidelines. We talked about, this financial one. He's like, well, just take care of it. And then this one, he goes, okay. So here's what this relationship is. We had a great relationship. I knew I was staying on the cliff, starting to go downhill with alcohol.
Okay.
I knew it.
Mm-hmm.
I had already been to one rehab. I was trying to hold it together. I knew I was couldn't hold it together. I didn't have any tools.
Right.
I'm trying to build a house with no tools.
Right.
And I knew I was in trouble. And she caught me on a Saturday morning, and this is how I remember it, is we were at a coffee shop, and she said, her sister had just had kids, and she said, Glenn, she says, we haven't really talked about this. She goes, I really am at the point in my life where I want to get married, and I want to have kids and start building a family. And she goes, I want to do it now, and I want to do it with you. I mean, that's Saturday morning.
Good morning.
I was like, holy fook, right?
Good morning. You got papers I need to sign?
Oh my God! I'm like, I have a wave of So we finished coffee and I remember like the next day, I remember calling her. I'm like, look, if that's really your goal in life, every minute you spend with me, I knew I wasn't the right guy. Mm-hmm. I knew I didn't even know who he was at that point. I'm like,
that sounds very stand-upish to me. Like you were standing up on.
Yeah, and I knew that. I knew that, and so I said, any minute you spend with me is a minute not going towards what you want.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't talk since.
Okay.
Right? And she was really cool. She's a really cool person, right? A+ level person. I mean, I loved her.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't love myself. I didn't have the tools or capability, right? So finally I said to her, and I'm cautious, and Jen knows I do eight. She knows I've reached out to prior women and have done 8th and 9th step work, and I had one from college, and so she understands that, right? So it's kind of,
so she's okay with it.
Yeah, I mean she gets it. So I said to this girl, I said, hey, let's meet for coffee. And she says, okay. So we go, and I said, hey, instead of a coffee, right, let's go to a restaurant early, like 3:30 or something, right? Because I can't hear in a coffee shop,
That's ironic.
So we went to a restaurant, and we sat down, and I'm telling you, first of all, she said, hey, you're kind of tan. I said, well, I was just out skiing with my daughter and stepdaughter. And she goes, oh, you're married? I'm like, yeah, like for some reason I thought she knew that. I wasn't really thinking, and she like paused. I'm like, was that a problem? And she goes, no, not at all. She goes, I expected to be married. It was just weird to hear, right? And I mean, we haven't seen each other in 20 years, right? And so I said, I don't know what your objective is. She goes, I just wanted to catch up and see what you're doing. Right, and see how life's going for you. She goes, I know you were challenged, and I said, well, I have an objective of sitting down with you, and my objective is to make amends. Right, and I told her I'm in AA, I'm sober. I said when we split ways back on that Saturday, I went downhill, and I told her, gave her the Cliff Notes version.
Right.
I mean, she looked at me, and I said, that's what I saved you from. I said, going into hell. And she said, Glenn, I knew you were struggling. I had no idea. She said, when you said you weren't drinking, I believed you. She goes, I was so naive, and she like Grace, she was so like thankful that I didn't pull her into that hell, right? And so, but I also told her the progressive story down to hell, but then I also shared stuff I'm doing today, right? And she's like, Glenn, that's just absolutely amazing. And then, so I said, hey, I just want to apologize and make amends. And I'm like, look, when we started going out, I had every great intention. I said, but I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know the path I was on. I didn't know how far that path would go into hell. I had no clue of any of that. I said, looking back, I should have been a better guy before I even reached out. I should have been better prepared. I said, I didn't know that then. I said, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. And I said, because I put her through some stuff with drinking. And I said, I just make amends. And she goes, man, that's just amazing. She goes, I really appreciate that. And, she says, I totally forgive you. And she goes, no. She says, I get it. And it was all cool, right? Yeah. And then she pulls out her phone. And she shows me a picture of her. She went through like stage 4 breast cancer and treatments, and she was explaining the story of her own hell, right? and there was the connection there, right? There was, because there was love, and the way I define love is not that feeling in my stomach, but I care about somebody else more than I do myself, right? And I was like felt for her, and I'm like, man, this is crazy, and right. So at the end of the getting together, we go to leave, and I'm like, well, what do we do, right? And she goes, well, you're married, I'm not, and I'm like, friendship, and I'm like, and she goes, well, what do you think about that? I'm like, well, what I know about male and female friendships is they never work because one of the two wants something more,
right?
And so, we just kind of left it, not really knowing, and then over probably the next couple days, I mean, it was just a couple touches on text, and it was just, I kind of felt where the fairway was,
right?
And I felt like, hey, you know what? I know where the rough is. I know where the fairway is. I mean, at some point here, we're going to start getting into the rough, right? And I didn't want to. I would never do that without telling Jen, and I'm like, hey, Jen understands the fairway of steps 8 and 9, but there's the edge of the fairway, right. So I remember, and again, this is how this stuff works, is. I have tools that I use, and I remember one of the guys from our church group sharing out loud, and the words literally got out of my mouth, and I knew what the answer was, and the answer is, man, you can't have a quote unquote friendship, right? And so what I wanted to chat about in real time, in real life is, just a caution flag, man, because you know what? I mean, I'm 9+ years sober. I have an amazing, but in your head, you can do jungle gym, gymnastics inside your head, man, that'll just, and then I believe in signs, right? I believe in, God shots, and I believe in, and now I'm starting to see everything lining up to say, hey, you know what? You can be a friend, right? Mm-hmm. You can maintain that friendship and a marriage, and I'm like, no, you can't.
No, you can't.
You're right.
No, you can't.
So I just want to. I mean, I'm telling you, steps 8 and 9. It doesn't matter if you're 9 years sober or 9 weeks sober. You got to watch what you're doing. And if you don't have a good program, and you can get sucked into it, and the way I was talking to. My sponsor, I was talking to, a couple other people about it. I'm like, here I've got, first of all, the grass is never greener. Mm-hmm. I told my son-in-law that before he got married. I'm like, look, this one, I said, grass is never greener. I don't care how green you think that grass looks, never greener. Mm-hmm. And I was reminded, the story I told is like, I'm going around the merry-go-round of life, right? The old-fashioned merry-go-rounds, you have a ring, you reach out and grab a ring. Right. Well, here I've got all these, gold rings in my arms, right? Piles of gold rings, great stuff. And yet, I see that next ring that's coming up, and I'm like, wow, that's platinum with diamonds and titanium, and let me go ahead and reach out for that. And in the end, it could just be just a glare off of something else, and I lose all the, so, but I'm telling you, it takes sober maturity. And I know, I think I made that up, and to me, it makes sense. I'm not sure if it makes sense to others, but you got to watch what you do, man, because I'm telling you, if you don't have the tools, I don't know how it works, right? How the signs work, and I started taking pictures of these signs, and I'm like, that can't be the message that I said, God, I'm like, dude, okay. I call God, dude. I'm like, dude, that can't be the message that you're trying to give me, right? And so I started deciphering: is that from God, or is that from
your own desires,
from my own selfish desires, or Satan? And it was funny because it had nothing to do with physicality. It had no physical relation. I mean, it had nothing to do with sex. Right. It had to do with, what I realized is that I really loved her. Yeah. And she meant more to me back then than I ever thought. Right. Because I was stinking drinking, man. Right. So it's crazy, man. So that's that. And then the second one is I was talking to a business guy that I haven't talked to in 15 years. And he goes, hey, man, you still owe me $5,000. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I do what?
I know what you didn't even know.
I'm like, I owe you $5,000. He goes, yeah, remember that? We did that, and I forward you $5,000, and then you're supposed to,
Right.
And I'm like, my memory of it was totally different.
Yeah.
My memory is he was forwarding me money for something else from this other guy, part of a deal, and his perception was, hey, I fronted you that money, and he was supposed to backfill it. You're supposed to send it back to me.
Right. Blah blah blah.
I don't remember that at all. You know what my sponsor said?
What? Pay him.
Doesn't matter. He said, your memory doesn't matter. He says you owe it, you pay him.
Yeah. Right.
So I said, okay.
Yep.
And it's real money. It's not a ton of money, but it's real money. But you know what? It's steps 8 and 9, man. It's super powerful.
Well, here's what I think, and thank you so much for sharing this morning, because I learned a lot. I mean, there was a million nuggets in there to take away from, but the couple things that really jumped out at me is that you said, your wife gets it. She gets the importance of step 8 and step 9, and for me, this whole conversation.
She would not get me going on vacation with her. She wouldn't understand that.
She wouldn't get that.
She wouldn't understand that part of it.
You'd be getting the eviction notice. That's what you'd be getting. But what's important, my takeaway is, and my experience tells me that I have to be right with myself. And for me to be right with myself, I have to be right with others. There are people that I still own a sit down with, but I'm still working on my living amends. I still need time so they know I'm changed, and they know my motives, and they know my heart and my actions. B, I'm looking for opportunity. I just,
Okay, so can I jump in?
Yeah, please.
I'm going to jump in because I love you, man.
Right.
I as far as living amends,
yes.
I don't know what else you can do.
Right.
I think that's an excuse.
Right.
I think you have proven. I mean, I don't know what else. I mean, I know most of your life.
Right. Yeah, you do.
I know most of what's going on.
Right.
And concrete's dry in many areas.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
And I think that's an excuse. And I'm not trying to call you out. I'm just saying there's nobody that I know that lives it like you do.
So what you're saying is...
And what I've said, you've lived it for 5 years.
Right.
Concrete's dry. I think you can have, if I could coach you, just my perspective, I think you got sure footing.
Okay. I appreciate
on the living
that.
amends.
But to your point early in the conversation, there's a lot of time that cement's still wet, right?
In your mind or their mind?
In their mind. No, in my mind. No, that is reality. Well, you're saying don't take step 8 and 9 ahead of step 2 and 3.
Right.
That's the cement is still wet. You're suggesting that I've had enough time for that cement to cure that I can go ahead and clean house.
That's my...
Yes.
I would talk to your sponsor.
Yeah.
But that's my input is, if not now, when?
That's true.
I mean, real. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, if you hit 12 grand slams in a row, at what level do you need to prove that you can hit a grand slam?
Yeah, right.
Is it 22 in a row? Is it 87 in a row? Is it 4,212?
I'm kind of holding out for 87.
Or could that be you saying, well, I don't have the guts, or I'm not ready, or whatever?
No, that's
I mean,
a good
you hit 5 years of grand slams of being committed to living differently, and I think that's, 5 years is not a flash in the pan, knee jerk habit,
right?
I think, and I think you go to the 20th degree, right? And then I think, you know what? I don't think the opportunity ever pops itself up. Right. I think you just got to take it. I think you got to step out there and just do it.
I love it.
And I think, you know what? That takes guts, but you got to believe in the program. You got to believe in.
I do believe in the program, and I do believe that how it relates to sobriety, because it doesn't really matter. Like you said, most of the time it doesn't matter.
If they spit in your face, are you going to go drink?
Yeah, no. No, it doesn't matter to the other person really as much as it's us cleaning our house. And all I know, the only reason I'm taking your advice and I'm going to move forward and I'm going to go do into action, okay, is because the book tells me, and I've seen it happen in the rooms, if you don't work the steps, and you don't work them, and you don't work them thoroughly and fearlessly, that there's a possibility you can go back to drink. That is not an option for me.
So, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Because all right, years ago, coming up in the executive ranks, they do all this industrial psychologist stuff and all these tests, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they surveyed 200 people that worked for me. They surveyed 10 people that worked with me, and they surveyed 5 people that worked over me.
Mm-hmm.
And with data, they gave me the report that I care about people, and I care about the people on my team. But the only reason why I care is because of how they benefit me.
Okay.
I don't know how they got that on a questionnaire.
Okay.
But they were probably right, right? So with the 8th and 9th step, right, it benefits us,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So is that a selfish move?
It's a healthy move.
I love that. You always have a good answer.
No, it is.
But
that's the healthy thing to do.
The way I looked at it is I have the emotional weight of
Yes.
carrying that around.
That's right.
That I
That's
hurt
what's-
the other person,
Yes.
and I carry that around. So by doing the 9th step, and you know what? When I send this guy money,
Yep.
that's clearing that off my shoulder,
That's
and it's
right.
clearing off. It's helping him,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
But with this other situation I talked about, I mean, I feel good.
Yeah. She feels better.
I think she feels better.
Sure, she does.
Because now she's got closure, saying, "Well, thank God I didn't go down that hole."
Right.
Right.
Sure.
Maybe
On top of everything else she had going on to go through that
Right.
shit show.
Right. So she's probably grateful.
Yeah, right.
So, but there's probably some 9th steps that don't benefit the other person.
Right.
And I don't really have examples of that, but
No.
it all can't be perfect.
Right.
Right. But it benefits us. So is that a selfish move?
Well,
Because we're not supposed to be self-centered.
I'm still stuck on the fact it doesn't need to be perfect. What I've learned in the rooms
No.
is the only step you need to do perfect is the first step. So
And hey, if you don't do it, you can always go back.
Yeah, right,
And
right.
and redo it. And say, hey, this is still grinding on me for some reason, man. I just But there was one of my 9 steps I did at the 3-year mark. I just reconnected with him last week, and I mean it was an amazing, loving connection. And it was Glenn. I'm watching. He goes, man. He goes, I'm proud of you.
But,
And to turn shit into saying, hey, I'm proud of you.
yeah, right.
I mean, only AA can do that.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
the way I think.
only
of it.
we can do it through action. I think that's what you said the chapter is named, right? Into action.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you need to respond to that person, and you don't really have to be right. Like with this money thing. I mean, in my mind,
Oh, I've done that, Glenn.
I think maybe there's 5% chance he's right, but 95% chance I can excuse myself away.
I'm
but
a few $100 away from paying down a multi-$1,000 debt that I stood for life saying this is unjustified that I owe him the money. It doesn't matter. I really did.
Right.
I really did.
And so, I mean, hey, at the end of the day, we're doing the right things. I have seen miracles in the 9th step.
Yeah.
But I think you got to do them the right way. I think you got to do them with somebody. I think you got to have living amends. Otherwise, you know what? Everybody on my amends list, they were tired of seeing my lips move.
Right.
But
And
when my feet
abstinence
started,
isn't enough.
no.
You got to be living right.
What took it with my ex-wife and my daughters is I had 3 years of never missing.
Right.
3 years of being present and never missing and changing how I acted and interacted and responded to them and lowered my ego and lowered my selfishness and lowered it was all about me and I made it about them.
You dried the cement.
Yeah. And I think, I just want to say I model a lot of myself and drive and commitment over you. And I think I'm not sure what else you could do.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that.
I mean, literally. I mean, I sit
I hope
there and
others appreciate it too. I mean, I love the raw honesty.
I mean, I sit there and say, what else could you do?
Right. I can't argue it.
I mean, you have literally changed. I have watched you come in the room, and I've watched you change your life over 5 years, and change how you live and interact with people, and how you're wired, how you're wired for love and serving, and not selfishness. And so I mean, I would just think about that. I mean, my opinion is not the end all be all, but I just think if you've hit 12 Grand Slams in a row,
right? How many more?
Yeah, I mean, you're a Grand Slam hitter, right?
I'm a hitter. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, you're a
at
hitter,
least I'm not
all
doing one hitters. All right, with that.
At least you're not swinging a miss.
That's right. Love you, brother.
Love you too, man.
All right, this is good stuff.
Good
Thanks,
luck on
man.
your ninth step.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@Sober.Coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.